Do you want to build your brand by being a guest on industry-leading podcasts? If you're a business leader, an author, or a speaker, my guess is that you do. Picture this. You, a dynamic executive easily connecting with engaged audiences, turbocharging your top-of-funnel marketing, and creating a treasure trove of content with every episode. Podcasting is a game changer that you've been waiting for. And podcastally.com is your VIP ticket to podcast PR success. Say goodbye to the ordinary and hello to the extraordinary exposure. Let the Podcast Ally team connect you with the best-in-class podcast for you to be a guest on. Head over to podcastally.com and use the promo code DT for a 10% discount on Podcast Ally services. That's podcastally.com, promo code DT. Welcome to High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. This season, we're diving deeper with more solo episodes, where I'll share the experiences that have led to recognition by EY, Forbes, Fast Company, and others. Not as a boast, but as milestones on my entrepreneurial path. From growing multi-million-dollar firms to successful business exits and building high-performance teams with a global perspective. I'll reveal the insights and strategies from my journey and share them with you so that we can win together. Alongside these solo episodes, we'll have industry visionaries and thought leaders, and we'll explore effective leadership. Ready to empower your leadership journey with real success stories? Let's embark on this transformational journey together. So best year, worst year is something that I was thinking about pretty frequently, right? Because I recently won a Impact 50 award for Raleigh. 2023, I was the EY Entrepreneur of the Year. We sold the diversity movement late in 2023. So a lot of awards, a lot of accolades, wrote a book recently, all these things, right? And when I think about, I'll give an example, best year, worst year. And unfortunately for me and for others, right, which is why I want to talk about this topic, I've talked to people that can really relate to this. During the time we were selling the diversity movement and going through due diligence, which is the negotiation kind of validation period, which is even in best times, best intentions, it's just not fun, right? Like literally someone's going through every single transaction your business has done for its history, right? And vetting you personally, like it's not fun, right? It's literally like an IRS audit. It's literally like being investigated by the FBI. And I've not had either of those, but like I can only imagine, like it's like dental work for 60 days. But my dad was going through very significant health issues during that exact same time. And to be very specific on significant, he had 3 brain surgeries in a 3-month period of time. And so it was not, and thankfully he's doing well. But during that time we were selling the business, I didn't know if my dad was going to be with us any longer or not. It was touch and go a lot of the time. And it was very, very difficult. And you don't put that on LinkedIn. You don't put that in your award speech, right? You grin and bear it. You push through, right? Like I know so many others do. Right. And so typically there's a story behind the smile, right? Because we're all dealing with family. There are people that I know and work with, and, think about a friend of mine said, and this statement was very powerful, that as a parent, you're only doing as well as the worst situation with your children. So if you have multiple kids, right, as a parent, you're only doing as well as, right, the worst thing going on with your kids. And a win as a parent is everybody's moving forward, even if they're moving forward differently, but everybody's moving forward. Those are wins. There are folks that are in that sandwich generation, right, where they're dealing with younger kids, kids in their teens, kids in college, things of that nature, but also dealing with caring for parents, right, let alone people that are going through a divorce or relationship issues, right? And so one of the things that's happening to all of us, right, is that balance between the work face and the life face, right? That smile, that perseverance during the day when we're going home to things that aren't quite right. And that doesn't mean there's not joy in our life. That doesn't mean there's not good things happening. But that means that so many people I talk to are weighted down by just the intense pressure of what they're going through at work and at home. And now imagine if both of those things are struggling. In my case, right, the work thing was moving in a good direction. The life thing was super chaotic, right? And so now how do you deal with that? So I gave a couple of glimpses because this podcast is not my therapy session, it's not all about me. It is really to acknowledge that people are doing the best they can. And as leaders, we need to check in with our people, not to know and understand every detail of our team member's life, but to be able to understand when people need a moment, to build trust enough where your team member can tell you, you know what, I'm having a little tough time. So if I'm not assigned anything brand new this week and I can just push through the week, that'd be amazing. Right. I, as a leader, don't need to know what that thing is, but to have the trust to where it can be communicated. Grant Willard, my mentor, my friend, what I used to use with him, and this was 30 years ago when I was head of sales for a tech company that he was running and then became vice president and ultimately president of that company, is I would say, Grant, I got a sprained ankle going on in life. That means I can still participate. I can still do work, but this isn't the week for high intensity conversations. This isn't the week for heavy coaching. This is the week I just need to get my job done best I can do it, right? And keep it moving. And Grant always appreciated, because he was a high octane leader and very focused on growth of the business and a caring human being as well. But you know, you're growing a small business and you got a little intensity about you. And he appreciated, and I appreciated having that trust with one another, that I could share that without all of the detail, but just let him know that a couple things weren't happening the way I'd like in the personal life. And so, how do you deal with that as an individual when you are trying to push through in the workday and really try to compartmentalize the life piece? And so, here's a couple things I've learned, right? And one of the big things is realize you're not the only one going through this. A lot of times when we're thinking about our personal issues, struggles, challenges, there's a feeling of loneliness, right? If a mother and daughter, a teenage daughter, aren't having the best moments, right? They think it's just them and I'm a bad mom and all these things. And it's just not true. It's just a cycle of life. But when you are dealing with it silently, you think it's only you and you amplify that particular issue, right? If you're going through relational issues, marriage, different things, you have that same feeling, man, what am I doing wrong? And it damages your image and it can bleed into your work life. Here's what I found. And again, I'm not an expert in it. I'm sharing what I've learned. I didn't want challenges I faced personally to completely take away from the things I was building for the long-term future of my life and my career. Because I did at least keep in perspective that most things will pass. You will get to the other side of them. Now, certainly there's people that are listening to the sound of my voice that are dealing with life and death things. And in the example I used with my dad, it could have went one way or the other. Most things aren't that level, right? Most things that we face can be managed, can be worked on, can be improved, and can be overcome to a degree, and at least come to a conclusion, right? If you're in a bad relationship, one way or the other, it can come to a conclusion. It doesn't have to stay that way, right? For a decade. If you're having trouble at home with raising your kids, you're going to get through some of those episodes, some of those issues, some of those time things. Keeping that in perspective is one of the big things that helped me bifurcate, right, those personal challenges and keep them from bleeding into the long-term professional, because the professional at that point was a way for me to maintain that self-esteem that something was going right. For me, I was able to put a little more time, effort, and energy, and work was therapeutic during certain times in my life. The other thing that I have done, I've recommended, is I don't think you should try to solve everything on your own. If you're deeply religious and have a relationship with a pastor or a priest or different things, in some cases, for me personally, and I've recommended for others, therapy is a very strong and powerful answer. And for those of us that are listening that have that high octane ego, and I don't need to talk to anybody, and there's a stigma to therapy and all those things, I had to work through that. And I had to realize that, wait a minute, if I had the answers to address some of the things I was facing, I wouldn't be in the situation. So therefore, I had to put my ego aside and say, wait a minute, I need some help, some support, some guidance to unpack some things, to really look at self and see of the challenges I'm having, what are caused by my thinking, my behavior, my actions. Because once you take ownership, and now I am talking relationship things in particular, but people can use therapy for depression, for anxiety, for all different kinds of things. You have to figure out what's you. But once you start working on things, the anxiety changes a little bit because you start to see progress in the midst of the pain. And so, one of my key recommendations as we think about best life, tough year, right? Best time, worst time, is I try to, and I'm using the word try because none of this I want to come across as holier than thou. I have all the answers. I don't. But seeking them from people that truly want to help and can help, truly confidential, is a very good thing, and I highly recommend. And for those of us that are employed and have organizations that have employee assistance programs, there are a lot of resources available so that you don't have to be alone, even though sometimes you feel alone. And that's a super important thing to think about, right? The other thing that it's taught me as a business leader, and I really had to learn this and unpack this, and some of these personal experiences over the years have really humbled me, in that the way that you speak to people, the way that you give feedback, the times that I was a little bit too harsh over the years, I really have worked on that because I now more fully, as a more mature professional, more mature leader, understand that that could be the tipping point for someone. That doesn't mean change the standard of what people need to deliver, right? There is a paycheck continuation program. As long as your paycheck is continuing, there's work that you need to do, right? Now, with that said, as a leader, as an inclusive leader, as a leader that's building a winning culture, there's got to be a component of that culture where you demonstrate empathy and care for people as humans. And that's something that I had to ensure, right, really over the last decade, to get to where I could manage the balance between economic value and empathetic leadership, right? And the more you're able to do that, the more you don't create or become the cause of the problem or exasperate challenges that people are having just living life, just trying to get through the workday, just to keep it moving. Workplace Options is the firm that acquired the diversity movement recently, and they did a psychological safety study across multiple countries. And one of the key stressors for employees was relationship with their manager, with their boss. And so, if we really unpack the power, the responsibility of leaders to try to be in good space with as many people as possible, well, then that's a great reason to think about, how do we relate to people that are different generation than us? How do we relate to people that are from a different culture, have a different religious background than we do, have a different ethnicity? And our ability to navigate that diverse landscape as leaders has a direct correlation on the positive impact that people feel in an organization, at work, and then ultimately in their life. And so, as I think about best year, worst year, right? And I think about, and here's what was interesting, in a happy spot. The day the final signatures that we were doing electronically for the transaction with Workplace Options, and the final verbal agreement, I had to make a couple things on the phone. The folks were helping my dad in a wheelchair. I was in the driver's seat in the car, and we were taking him home. And that day was an emotional day, but it was a win after 4 or 5 months of really extreme pressure, right? Because anytime you're selling a business, anytime you're dealing with loved ones that are challenged, it is significant weight, right? And so the other thing I would say in terms of carrying that weight is I am very blessed to have very strong friendships. I don't have a lot of deep, long lasting friendships, but I have a handful that are super meaningful, right? Friends that I can call, even if I haven't spoke to in a couple months, and we can just pick up, right? Because we've been through so many things together, seen each other grow, supported each other, so many things that the facade of the business success, the brand, that doesn't matter. It's, hey man, how can I help you? Right? How can I be there for you? How can I listen for you? What can I do? And it is really, really important as we think about business success, business goals, that all of these business goals are done, delivered through people. And so, my main takeaway as a leader is remember that you are an influencer, you are a catalyst in the well being of your team and people as individuals. And thinking about that is an additional heavy weight for leaders. And some people don't want to fully accept that mantle, right? We'll say things like, the reason I'm very direct is I like to be truthful and honest with people. Okay. Well, you can do that and still do that in a thoughtful way. You can be compassionate and coin operated, right? It just means you have to think about things more thoughtfully. You have to slow down and understand your team at a deeper level. You have to take your one-on-ones that you have with your team and really thoughtfully, how are you doing? And it's amazing when I've asked that simple question with that tone, with the real openness to wanting to know. Some people don't want to talk about it and they'll be like, I'm doing fine. And they'll jump into the business, and that's okay. But some people will let you know, man, I'm doing okay. And a lot of times when people say they're doing okay, right? There's a lot to unpack there. But if somebody tells me they're doing okay, at a minimum, that's a signal to me, right? That today might not be the day for them to have the tough meeting based on the tone and the temperament of that dialogue. But as a leader, if you don't ask, you don't give yourself an opportunity for any verbal or body language clues of what may be going on. And I'm not talking about being a corporate therapist. I'm not talking about, right, digging into people's personal lives at a level of depth that it is out of bounds for most of us as leaders. But I am talking about a different level of sensitivity and just being aware of what people are working through as humans. And so that's kind of the thought process and the things when we're talking about best year, worst year. And for me, 2023 fits that bill in a lot of major ways. And I'm not ashamed. I am actually saying it out loud and happy to share with folks that I needed to get someone to talk to during parts of the year. Because here's the thing I understood. Because of the number of responsibilities I have, I couldn't break. There were too many people that were depending on me. So therefore, I needed to put the ego aside, get the help that I needed, the support that I needed, because I could not break. And so that means that my responsibility was higher than my ego about needing a little help. And that is one thing to remember as a leader is most leaders want to do right things. They want to be responsible. And that was helpful to me because it helped push me in a direction, right, where I needed a safe space that I could share. One of the things people don't understand, don't agree, and will never really understand unless they're in certain levels of leadership is the loneliness of leadership. How few people can really understand the pressures, the tensions. That's a very real thing. That business leader, who can I talk to? Who can I trust? Who can I really share with that's not judging me or wanting something from me? Right. And so that loneliness starts to make you operate in a little bit of a cocoon. And that's not healthy for any of us. And so my encouragement with bringing up this topic, as we are talking about mental health and well-being and employee engagement and employee wellness and all the things, sometimes the leaders get left out of that conversation. And we need to make sure that we have space to think about things from the perspective of those that are leading others, that are responsible for others, right? Because we need support also. We need a little grace also, right? For maybe saying something that may be a little this or that. And wait a minute, do you as a team member employee take everything so extremely personal, or can you look and say, that might not have been all me? There might be something behind that curtain. Let me kind of step to the side a moment. I'm not going to overreact to it. Now, certainly if somebody's doing something day in, day out, and it's a pattern, you know what, that's a little out of character for Gloria. I'm gonna step back a little bit and give some grace that maybe she's got a little bit going on, right? And giving your leader space as a human also. Now that's a optional thing for team members, because as leaders, we sign up for a different mantle. But I'm just throwing that out there, that from time to time as team members, we over-engineer every word that comes out of a leader's mouth, and we think about them more robotic than human. We expect a degree of perfection that we don't expect in self. And so that's the only thing I'll throw out there for the team members. In reality, leaders have signed up, are compensated for, are rewarded for the pressures that we've chased, the goals that we've attained. And it is nice, however, and I will share this, and this is super cool. There have been times of the diversity movement, and there's been times just in general. I got a LinkedIn message from a partner company employee that I'd worked with maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even. It was a long time ago. And they'd read something I'd posted on LinkedIn, and they just sent me a note in Messenger and just said, it's really great to see the work that you're doing, the give backs that you're doing. It just was really complimentary. And I hadn't talked to this person in, 10 years. But that compliment landed on a day in 2023 that I really needed to be uplifted. And it mattered, right? Like at that moment, that day, like it mattered. You know, there are times when team members and different things will just say, you know what, Don, you did a good job on this today. And just remember that your leaders are working through things also. And those little points of feedback, because people are very good with telling you what they don't like, telling you that they need to make more money, telling you that, the organization needs to be more clear, you need to be a better communicator. People are very good with feedback. We have addressed some of the feedback issues with team members to leaders, right? People are very open in the comment section of their pulse surveys. Like, leaders are getting feedback these days, right? So, and I've talked to a lot of leaders, like we're getting feedback, right? But also, if your leaders are doing things that you want to see them continue, reinforce it with that positive affirmation as well with them as well. And you'll be amazed at how thoughtfully received it will be in most cases, and go from there. So that is my kind of, 15, 20-minute thoughts on kind of best year, worst year. It's an important topic to remember, and remember that there's usually a story behind the smile. Thank you for joining us on High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. Today's episode is a step in our collective journey towards leadership excellence. Remember, every story we share and every insight we gain is a piece in the puzzle of our leadership journey. For more insight and detail, hit the subscribe button so that we can stay connected. For deeper information and more episodes, go to donaldthompson.com. Continue to lead with vision and purpose, and until we meet again, embrace your role as a high-octane leader in the ever-evolving world of business.